Okay, let's have a look at question 2. Question 2 says, what percentage of 240 is 40? Notice I have put a square, a little box around the word of, because that is key to this type of question. If I want to create a percentage answer, what I need to do is create a fraction out of the problem. Turn the fraction then into a percentage. So the first thing is, let's create the fraction. Just be careful, I've got 240 and 40. So do you put 240 over 40, or do you put 40 over 240? Which way around do you put it? The key is that word of, as I've already said. If I said to you, you scored 40 marks out of 240, most people would automatically write 40 over 240. Well, that is as simple as it gets, basically. If you want what percentage of 240, in other words, what percentage out of 240 is 40, then out of 240 means the fraction you create means that 240 must be on the bottom line of that fraction. So of 240, bottom line with the 240. What percentage of 240 is 40? You have 40 out of 240. That's the fraction that you create. Once you've got the fraction, then there are many techniques to turn that fraction into a into a percentage answer. One way, on a calculator, is simply to take the 40, top number, and share it by 240, to turn it into the decimal which is equivalent to it. So if you do it this way, you will get 0.166666 recurring. Now that's not the percentage answer, that's a decimal answer. That's the decimal, the same as that fraction. To turn that decimal into a percentage, all you've got to do to turn a decimal into a percentage is to multiply by 100. So for example, 0.32 times it by 100, you'll get 32%. So in this case, times that by 100, move the point 1, 2 places, you'll get 16.66666, which I'll put as a dot above it, percent. So there you go. What percentage of 240 is 40? It's 16.66666%. Other people prefer to do 40 over 240 as a fraction and say times by 100% straight away and do it all in one go on a calculator. So they would put 40, fraction button, 240, actually put the fraction on the display, then times by 100 and press equals, and you get the answer 16.666%. Okay, there's number one. Number two, we've got a compound interest question, which is a percentage question. There's a slow way, there's an easy way, a quick way. Let's do the slow way. The slow way is to realise that you need to do a year 1, year 2, year 3 calculation. Year 1, you are getting interest given to you by the bank. The interest will be 6% of £600 for the first year. Well, 6% of £600 you work out by saying, take the 600, let's work out 1% first, let's share by 100, that gives you 1%, and if you want 6%, times that answer by 6. 600, share by 100, that's 6, times by 6, you get £36. So the interest given to you by the bank for the first year is £36. Now when you come to the second year, you have to do a second separate calculation. So I would do year 2. Let's work out the interest for year 2. The interest will be 6% again, but it's no longer of £600 because the bank for the first year has given you £36 in interest. So we have now a grand total of 636 in the bank. So 6% of 636. You get 636. If you share it by 100, that gives you 1%. Times it by 6 will give you 6%. So 636, and then we have to times that by 6. We get interest of £38.16 for the second year. Notice the interest has gone up from £36 to £38.16. Okay, that's because the total in the bank is getting bigger, so the interest will get bigger for year 2. Okay, I'm running out of space, so instead of going off the screen, I'll go back up here, remove question 2, and I will put question 3, year 3 calculation up here. Year 3, right, what's the interest? The interest will be equal to 6% of... Now, there's going to be a new total in the bank to think about. At the start of the year, you had 636, and by the end of year 2, you added another 3816 to that. So if I take 3816 and I add to it 636, I now have in the bank £674.16. So the third year, we'll do as a calculation of 674.16, 6% of that. So the total's gone up. Here we go then. You take the 674.16, you share it by 100 to get 1%, times it by 6 and you'll get 6%. Okay, so if I work that out, share by 100 and times by 6. And this time the bank gives us £40.45 in interest for that third year. So if you want to know what is the final total in the bank account at the end of 3 years, here we go. The final total in the bank account will be the £674.16, which was what you had in at the end of year 2, plus the £40.45, which is the interest for year 3. You add those two figures together. Let's make some space here. Getting rid of this now. Add those two figures together and you will end up with a grand total in the bank. 674.16 plus £40.45, and you get an answer of £714.61 is the final total in the bank. And there you go, there's the compound interest question finished. 2 points. One is you can't just work out 6% of 600 for 1 year and then treble it for 3 years, because you have 3 different calculations, so you can't just treble your answer for the 3 years because the total in the bank is constantly changing. So that's the first point. The second point, there's a much quicker way. Much quicker way. So this is the quick way, which if you want to, you could make a note about. Quick way. And if you're not sure about this, then you can refer to another video that we've got on the site which shows you this quick way in much more detail. The quick way to get the final total for a compound interest question is simply to take the £600 and multiply it by, well, if you want a 6% increase, you multiply it by 1.06. I'm not going to explain where that comes from in this video, but that's what you multiply it by. If you were increasing by 13%, you'd multiply by 1.13. So 1.06 is a 6% increase. If you want to do it for 3 years and leave it in the bank for 3 years, you raise that to a power 3. And that's the calculation you can do in one step on a calculator. So 600 times by 1.06 power 3, and you get an answer of £714, and believe it or not, exactly 61p, which is exactly the same answer, but I've done it in about a quarter of the time. So if my preference would be, if I was doing the exam, to do it the quick way. But it's obviously a little bit harder to remember what to do. So the choice is yours. Okay, that was question number 3. Okay, number 4. Okay, number 4, I'll do it at the bottom here, just enough space. Number 4 is a standard form question. Write these numbers in standard form. And you've got part A, you've got the number 560000000. Okay, in standard form. I'm not explaining why this works, I'm just going to do it. You need to get the number to start with a number between 1 and 9.9. So, to do that, I get hold of the decimal point, which is at the end. You can't see it, but it's at the end. And ask yourself, how many places, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 places, how many places do I need to move it to get to a number between 1 and 9.999? And that answer is 8 places. So what I write down is, I've moved it to there, you get 5.6, and then you write times 10 to the power, and then you write down how many places have I moved it. I moved it 8 places. There you go. There is the standard form number for that particular question. Very common, people say, let's count the noughts, and you write the answer as 56 times 10 to the 7 because there's 7 noughts. That number is not standard form because you must have that number between 1 and 9.9. that means it needs to be 5.6, and that needs to be an 8, not a 7. So that is the wrong answer. So there you go, there's the standard form for that. Okay, part B. Part B, we've got another standard form number. This time it's a very small number. Let me just make sure I get the number of zeros correct here. There we go, we've got 0.0000067. I want that in standard form. So, we move the point so many places until we get to a number between 1 and 9.9999. So, if I move it from there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places I need to move that. Let me just check that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's right, 6 places. So, what is the number I get? Well, I'd get 6.7 if I did that. Times by 10, it's always times 10 to some power. How many places have I moved it? 6. But one snag which people forget is if it's a tiny number like 0.0000000, you need to insert a minus sign there, so it's 6.7 times 10 to the minus 6. This was a huge number, not an awkward tiny little decimal, so we had a positive 8 for that one. And that's the answer to that one, 6.7 times 10 to the minus 6. Okay, let's see if we can get number 5 in. So moving very quickly on. Number 5, if I turn over to the next part of the test, for question number 5. And number 5 says, what percentage is 50 out of 250? Right, well, it's another percentage question. What percentage is 50 out of 250? Question mark. Okay, well, ask yourself, what fraction do we set up? 50 out of 250. Now, the way this is set up is a bit easier than the first question we did on percentages. It's out of 250, so most people would automatically set up out of 250 like that. So 50 out of 250, the 50 is on top, out of the 250 on the bottom. What we need to do then is change that to a percentage. Well, I could do the same that I did on the previous question, once I've got the fraction. All you've got to do is say 50, share by 250. That gives you the decimal, 0.2. Then you times that by 100, and you would get 20%. And that's as simple as that. So 50, share by 250, decimal, take the decimal, times by 100, 20%. There's a much easier way to do this in your head if you want to, because you could do this. You could say that 50 over 250, if I wanted to, I could double the bottom line to get 500, and so I double the top line to get 100. Just bear with me what I'm doing. Double that, and then if I share this by 5, I'd get 100. So I share that top one by 5 as well. Remember, whatever you do to a fraction bottom line, you must do to the top as well. So share that by 5, share that by 5, you get 20 out of 100. You should know 20 out of 100 means the same thing as 20%. Both ways are perfectly fine. This bottom line is really a method you would use on paper 1. For this here, this is a paper 2 method, calculator method. 50 share by 250, 0.2 times 100, 20%. This is paper 1 method. Change that 50 over 250 to 100 over 500, which is the same as 20 over 100, which is 20%. That is a paper 1 method. But the answer either way is 20%. Okay, let's have a look at question 6. Question 6, okay, we've got a cylinder which has a uniform circular cross-section. It's got a radius given and a height given. Calculate the volume of the cylinder. Right, well, you will not be told what the formula for the volume of a cylinder is. You need to know what the volume formula is. This is something you should just quote. V equals pi r squared h is something you just quote. If you've forgotten that formula, you can access a formula sheet in PDF format to download and print off on this site. Okay, so there's the formula, V equals pi r squared h, and now you just substitute in all the values for this particular formula. So, the volume equals pi, well, that's always going to be approximately 3.14. Multiplied by radius squared, well, the radius in this question is 3.9, so you're going to get 3.9 times by another 3.9. times by the height of the cylinder is 17.4. So that is the calculation that will give you the volume of this cylinder. So V equals, reach for a calculator, and we will have 3.14 times 3.9 times 3.9 times 17.4. And the answer to that is 831 and 0.0 if you want to write the first decimal place down. And we're in centimetre cubes because it's a volume of a solid object. And that is the volume of that cylinder. Okay, some people may want to use the Prism formula to work out the volume of a cylinder, because remember, a cylinder is just a circular face with uniform cross-section. Like so, it's just a long tube which has always got a constant circular face. So you could actually use the volume of a prism, which is cross-sectional area times by depth. You can use that formula. Okay, but obviously if you're using that formula, what you need to realise is that the volume would be, cross-sectional area is the area of a circle, which is pi r squared, and then times by the depth, well, that's like timesing pi r squared by h, which is exactly the same formula you get by using the original pi r squared h. If I was doing it, I would just quote that formula for a cylinder straight out and do that. If you want to, you can do this as a prism calculation. CSA, cross-sectional area, is area of a circle, pi r squared, and then times by the depth, or you can call it height if you turn it on its side. And you obviously put the numbers in, you get the same answer. So there is the answer, 831.0 cubic centimetres for the volume of that cylinder. Okay, right, number 7, we're running a bit short of time because I don't want to make the videos too long. But see if we can just finish this off very quickly. Question number 7, we have to expand and simplify x plus 3 multiplied by x minus 4. Without explaining why we do this, this is what you need to do. First times first is x times x, x squared. X times x is x squared. Then you say x times minus 4 is minus 4x. Plus 3 times x is plus 3x. And plus 3 times by minus 4, notice it's times by minus 4, is minus 12. You do not say plus 3 minus 4 is negative 1. We're not taking them away. So we get that. That's the expanding done. The question says expand and simplify. What you'll notice is that the first term is going to go straight down, but the two middle ones will combine together because they're both x's. A minus 4x with a plus 3x gives you minus 1x. The minuses win a battle if you use the army method. And they win by 1, so it's minus 1x, and then minus 12 on the end. And that is the answer. If you expand and simplify that, you get that. That's the end of that question. Okay, number 8. Okay, for number 8, we have a change of subject of a formula question. And number 9, we've got a standard form question. Okay, I think because I'm running over the limit of time that I'm available to me on this, I'll leave question 8 and question 9 to the next video.